Okay, hello everyone. This is Ian from Userscape. I'm also joined by Matt from Userscape, and we'll be walking through agent training today on HelpSpot. So a lot of different things to cover. If you have any questions along the way, please enter those into the question box in GoToWebinar in the little control panel you have there. And at the end, we'll do a Q&A and go through those questions um, that cover your kind of specific needs of your installation. All right, so I'm going to jump in here with some basic stuff and then kind of go deeper from there. So first of all, just so you're aware, the data here is from, we've made thousands and thousands of requests to populate this training installation. They're from Alice in Wonderland, so they don't necessarily make sense, but they are just data for us to have in there so you can see a filled out installation. I also want to note, sometimes, especially new agents might not be aware of this, but what we're looking at here is the admin installation and the admin sort of interface where you will primarily work. And there's also the portal interface. So this is where customers would go. So if you do see this, that's the difference there. If you end up on your own HelpSpot installation out on this, what we call the portal, and you need to get back into where agents go, you would just go to admin.php, and that'll bring you back in here. So we're not going to talk about the portal too much today. We go over that more in the administrators training, but just so you're aware, that's what that is. And if you get stuck out there, admin.php is where you need to go to log in to work your requests. You can also always get to the portal from right here. And if you're in an installation with multiple portals, those would all be listed here as well. Okay, so we'll start with kind of the lay of the land here and go from there. So top right corner, we have your name menu. This is where preferences are and logging out, links to help. We have, well, we can actually cover preferences in just a moment. We have the portal, forum system, knowledge books where you might keep documentation and so on. The workspace, which is primarily what we're going to be looking at today, which is where you manage all your different requests. Now, what I want to do is go into this preferences menu to start, cover a few of the core preferences. So these are going to be preferences for your account in HelpSpot. And there's a whole bunch of different things in here, from obviously your name and email, your avatar, all those kind of things. But I want to point out a few of the more important ones. So first off, out of office, if you go away or you're out, then the out of office will let you forward requests to either another staff member or just to the inbox. So this way, if requests that were assigned to you get reopened, for example, rather than being sort of abandoned in your queue while you're away, you can make sure that those get reassigned to someone who's covering you or just out to the general inbox so that another agent can pick those up. We also have email signatures. So if you want to not have to, say, type your name at the end of each request, you could just fill this out. And put whatever kind of standard email signature information you want in there. And HelpSpot will always append that for you. If you do use this tool, you want to set the text version as well as the HTML version so that both of those are set. Because when HelpSpot sends emails to your customers, it sends them in both text and HTML format. And so we need a signature in both formats. Just to be clear, the HTML version actually doesn't need HTML tags. If you're familiar with that, you would just, it would generally look the same as the text one for the most part. But if you do want things like bold and so on, there's different formatting options that you can put in here, or links. So it gives you more control over the display of the HTML version. And text is just plain text. Whole bunch of different notification settings here. This is where you would for instance, turn on and off the email notifications when you're assigned a request. One other one to point out here that sometimes people miss is notify on unassigned new requests. So what this lets you do is, let's say you always want to be notified when something new comes in that's not assigned to anyone else, then this would notify you of that. So this is a general setting. If you're in a larger installation, you probably wouldn't use this because you're gonna have too much new unassigned requests. But if you have a smaller team, then this can be a useful feature. On a larger team, you might use another tool we have called triggers, which an administrator would be able to configure to have more fine-grained control over the different notifications. One other item here that I do want to point out that tends to be used a lot is this option right here for default notes to public on the request page. So what this does is it lets you default if when you are on the request screen, adding a note, if that note is public, meaning it will go to your customer and be emailed to them, or if it defaults to being private, where it's just going to be for your internal use. And I'll show you that in a few minutes here, what that looks like. But basically, this lets you choose if you want to default to your notes being public or private. And this way, let's say you want to default to them being private, just so that you have to explicitly make them public when you want them to go to customers. Or if you're in your role, you're basically always publicly writing back to customers, you could leave this at the default, which is checked, which will default it to public. Okay, so let's jump back out to the workspace. So let's go down through, close that for a second. Over here we have the different filters and searching. Now, top filter here is called inbox. And this is going to be any requests that are new and unassigned will end up in the inbox. And this is going to be a central point for all inbound communication, even if you have multiple email accounts that you manage, for example, or multiple portals. All of those will come into the central inbox for you to work off of. My queue, now in HelpSpot, requests that are assigned to you are in your My Queue. They're actually displayed in My Queue if they're also open. So this is showing us the requests that are open and assigned to me currently. So this way you always know exactly what's assigned to you and what's waiting on you, and that's in your My Queue. Searching, so you can search by customer information like email or name or ID. You can also full text search against all the notes in the whole history that the system has. So if you're looking for not necessarily a person, but a product identifier or some other information, you can do that. There's also the advanced search options. So these let you search against specific fields, in this case, customer information. We also have detailed searching, which lets you pick, from any of the different information HelpSpot has to search against. What's nice about the detailed search is you can add multiple conditions here. So let's say we want to search, everything from the customer named Smith in the past 30 days. We could do that. I don't know if we actually have any Smiths in here. We do. So there's one. We can control the ordering even if you have a lot of results. And then what's handy here is that we can actually save this as a filter. So we're going to talk more about filters in a moment. But if this is something you want to use over and over, you could save it as a filter. You can also search knowledge tags, which are used in the knowledge book and forum tools, as well as, again, full text searching. So this is going to just search all the notes in all the requests throughout the system. Down below, we have our filters. So filters provide you different views into all the requests in HelpSpot. And so here we have an all open filter with 124 requests in it. It's also showing us all the requests across the entire system, regardless of who they're assigned to or any other factors, everything that's open. Here we're seeing just escalated requests. So we have an escalated filter for requests that have been escalated. We can see those. Recently closed requests, 203 that have been closed in the past 7 days. So these are just some default ones that are just built in now. We've gone ahead in this training installation and added additional filters just as examples of what you might want to do. So here, for example, we have a filter for each agent, and we can see all the ones assigned to Hugh, for example, here. So this is essentially Hugh's my queue. So I can see Hugh's my queue by creating a filter that lets me see that. Another thing we might want to do is have all the open requests in a certain category. So here's all the general sales requests that are currently open. And we could, here's demo requests that are currently open. So it's just a very basic idea of what's possible. We can create our own filters and talk about some more advanced concepts here in the filter screen. So with the filtering system, we can give our filter a name, we can organize it into folders as these are, we can set if we want to display the count as these do. We can control who sees it. So is this a filter that's only for me, or is it for everyone in my permission group, or is it just for me and some other specific individuals? So we can control that. Then we set what we're actually looking for. So we want to filter what is this filter going to show us? So here it's showing by default all the requests that are open. We can add additional conditions here. A lot of different options. So customer information, maybe we want to have a filter that's based on a specific VIP customer or a certain class of customer, like you have different plans and certain plans require different response times. And you might have, for example, a custom field that tracks that. So you could filter based on that. You could filter based on category, as we've seen, on status types, by the mailbox it came in on, or the portal it came in through, different time metrics. So maybe we only want to see requests that have been opened today. So this will be a today filter only. So older requests wouldn't show up here, even if they were open. It's going to limit us to just requests that have been opened today. We could add something else to that. So maybe we only want to see open today. And let's see. Open today and perhaps, again, in a certain category we're keeping an eye on. Something that was for development. So we could limit it to these conditions. There's a couple other conditions I do want to touch on. Down below are some of the more advanced conditions. The most useful of these really is the subgrouping. So let me make a new option here. We could do something like, actually, clear that out. So maybe we want to see all the requests that are open today, that have been open today, in any of a few categories. So then with the subgroupings, we can do that. We want an any. Okay, so where category is, maybe we want to see all the requests open today in any of our sales categories. We can go through and set that up. Not sure which one I have. Upgrade. Okay. So what we've done out here, for example, we had individual filters for each of these. In this case, we're grouping them together so that we don't have to have an individual filter for each. We are just creating a filter that covers all the sales categories for requests open today. Give it a name. Something like that. We could put it in a folder or we could leave it top level. I'll leave it top level for now. We could run a test just to make sure that our filter is actually pulling back the requests we expect it to. So it is here. So let's save that for now. Okay, so now anytime we're navigating throughout the workspace here, we're answering requests, we're in other filters, we can always see how many are matching sales open today. Now maybe we want to tweak this further. We can go into the gear here and click Edit Filter. And under options, there's a whole bunch of different things we might want to do. We can control the ordering. We can control what columns are displayed in the resulting grid. So perhaps we want to show the mailbox, for example, or more information about the customer. Maybe we want to always see the customer ID, and we want to put that up the top. Do that. Some other interesting controls are grouping. So let me save this first. Okay, so here we're seeing these requests just in a list. If we go back and edit, perhaps we want to have more visual distinction on maybe the different categories that these are across. So let's group by category. Okay, so now we can see that while this is showing us requests from these 3 different categories, we can actually very clearly see which category each of these belongs to. And we can even do different batching operations when we get to that point. So the grouping can be really handy for just giving you a nice visual dashboard kind of view of the requests rather than them being all in one list. And there's a whole bunch of different things you can group on as well. Custom fields can be grouped on, different customer information, who it's assigned to, which can be handy, or different hours and times of the day. So if you want to see it grouped by the time of day it was opened, for example, you could do that. Okay, just hold it 1 second, just checking my notes here. The other thing about filters to mention is that this is also a great tool for working together collaboratively on different sorts of requests. So you could create filters like this, maybe for requests in certain categories that you're working with other agents. For example, another common use would be scenarios such as either escalations or where requests have met certain conditions. For example, we could have a condition here that said where the minutes since the customer last updated is a certain amount of time. And so we want to see all the requests where it's been more than a day, for example, since the customer updated. So this would further limit this, or maybe we just want to see 4 hours. Let's do 4 hours. So this says tracked in minutes. So 240 minutes, so very granular. Just an example of what you might want to use if you're keeping an eye on requests that are maybe open longer than they should be, things of that nature. The filters can help you with those scenarios as well. Okay, so once you have a filter, let's go back out. Either one of the built-in filters like MyQ or any of the built-in global filters like all open. You have all these different operations that can take place here. So for example, we can look at a stream view. So this is a different view of this filter result set. By default, we're seeing basically the IDs and the summary. But we can also see the actual notes within each request right from here. So across all the different IDs, we go to all open, for example. This will show us all the latest notes for what's happening in these requests. So sometimes you might have filters where you just want to keep an eye on things and you just want to see what's changing in them. Stream view lets you do that, which is pretty handy. Back to the grid view. We talked about our editing. There's also this concept of making this the default workspace. So if you have a filter that's actually more important than your MyQ, which can sometimes be the case in certain companies, you could create the filter you need to see most often and make that your default workspace. When you do that, when you click on workspace up here, it'll bring you to that filter instead of to your MyQ. We also have an RSS feed for each filter. That's a secured RSS feed if you wanted to bring it into an RSS reader. You can export this as CSV if you ever need to download this information. We also have different batching operations here. So we can go through and select certain requests or all requests. You can batch reassign them into specific categories and users. So we're going to assign all these to Tom Smith, for example, here. Batch close them if we know they've been dealt with. Batch respond. So this would be useful in the case where you have a whole bunch of customers who emailed you about a specific issue. For example, maybe you had a system that was down and 50 customers email you about that system being down. Rather than going into each one of those requests and responding 50 different times, we can just batch respond. And that would let us respond to everybody selected with a single reply. And HelpSpot will send them each an individual email, so it's not like a CC or anything like that. Each one gets their own email, but you only have to fill out the note once, select the category once, and all, if you have any other fields or anything like that that needs to be set, all that stuff you can control. So a single spot, do all that batching. You can also merge requests. So this is handy for things like customer emails and then the email in again with an attachment they forgot. Just from right here, often you could definitely see it's the same customer, and often just from the summary, you'll be able to tell what's going on and you can merge them together. You can also change the status and mark them as spam, so handy for going through kind of first thing in the morning and just clearing out anything that's kind of extra from overnight. We also have the option here to peek. So again, if you're kind of working through the queue, like the inbox, for example, first thing in the morning, and you need a little bit more detail here, we can click on it and see all the details on the request without having to go into each one necessarily. We can go back and forth between them. You also select them from out here. Selected. So just a handy way to save time and not have to navigate back and forth between requests when you really just want to take a peek in and see what's going on. Okay, so now we are going to jump in to a request itself. So up at the top here we have customer information, first name, last name, email, phone, customer ID. This customer ID is not an ID that HelpSpot sets, but is an ID that you would set. So it's an optional field. If you don't use customer IDs, that's fine. But if you have a customer data system, e-commerce system, something like that, that generates customer IDs that are unique, then you can include those here. And then this way, they can be filtered on and searched for and all those kind of things used in the reporting by the administrators. History search. So we can search for the history of this person if they have other requests in the system. HelpSpot will also automatically search to see if they have other open requests, and if they do, we'll display that to you. Live lookup. So this is a system that HelpSpot includes that lets you integrate with your customer data systems. So this isn't something that you as agents would generally be directly responsible for, but most installations are set up to use live lookup so that you don't have to navigate between your other systems to find information on the customer you're dealing with. You can just go to the live lookup tab and it'll display a whole bunch of information to you about this person. And it can even display things like links out to other systems and so on. It can populate fields that you've created in HelpSpot, custom fields. It can populate that with data. So by default, if it's been configured by your administrators, you'll be able to run live lookup, insert customer information. This can also actually be automated to automatically insert customer information for you. So some of you in your installations might see that as well. That's just depends on how your administrators have configured it. If you're not using Live Lookup, then it's something you'll definitely want to take a look at because it does save a whole bunch of time so you don't have to copy and paste emails to search for this person, for example, or anything like that. You can just click here, see the information, and be fully up to speed on their order history or other sorts of history information you might need on them. Over at the right, we have sort of the meta information about the request, its unique ID, reminders. So these are handy if you want to email yourself in the future about this request. Okay, so we can write a note, set the day we want this to be reminded about this, and the time. Who to remind, so we're selected by default, but we could also select other people. And then we can just create that. So now we'll have this reminder that HelpSpot will email us at the time we specified, and just another tool to make sure we follow up as needed. Different options here like merging requests, print view if you need to physically print it. Down here we have different status types. These are customized by your administrators, but the key thing to know is that status types can often be used for different workflows. So for example, we had an escalated filter, and how we put something in the escalated filter is simply to change its status to escalated in the case of our training installation here. Also, when you close a request, it has to have a status other than active. So whenever you close a request, you'll just need to pick a status besides active. Categorization, if we need to change the category of any of these requests, we can do that. When we change requests, when we change categories, we might see custom fields appear as here. So here we have just a location custom field. Custom fields can be category specific. Same with the assigned user is category specific. So each category has its own unique set of users that are assignable. Or of course, you can send something back to the inbox. Each category also has its own reporting tags that your administrators will have configured. That's useful for additional filtering and reporting. So on the administrative end, it's great for reporting, but on the filtering end, it can be very handy for filters as well. You can filter based on more granularly than just on the category, but all the way down to something very specific based on a tag, which is nice because rather than trying to full text search through for maybe a certain feature, if you're a software company, or a certain operating system, if you're an internal IT or something like that, you can tag the request with those, and then you can very precisely filter. Down here, we also have the urgency flag. So that uses HelpSpot's built-in urgent, not urgent setting. Okay, so here in the center, we have the notes area. You can reply to the customer. Mod. Okay, we can type as normal. We can add lists, and so on. Down here, we can specify if we want this note to be public. So this will be, if we update the request, this will be emailed to the customer. If we want it to be private, so it'll just be for our internal use that we're logging. So this is handy for if you're working on something, and this is a good place to take notes on what you figured out so far. If you're reassigning the request to another user, it can be great so that you can add a note and let them bring them up to speed on maybe some additional information you have, something like that. We also have external notes. So these are kind of a special case of note where we're going to email a third party. So traditionally, this would be something like a vendor, where we want the customers emailed us, and the solution is with someone outside of our organization. So we're going to email a third party. We can set the to address. And when we update this request, this email will be private from the customer, so the customer won't see it, and it'll go to the person at our outside vendor. And when they respond, that will also be private. So we can have this whole private interaction with a third party separate from our interaction with the customer, but still contained completely down below here in our request history. So let's just have one single spot to kind of manage everything. Most of the time, of course, you'll be doing public notes. From here, you can control what email account they go out from. We can also, if you have multiple email accounts, if you have one, then just be one. We can also control different notification settings. So we can perhaps notify another staff person. So on this note, we want to publicly email the customer, and we also want to send an email to Harmony to let her know that, to get a copy of this email, essentially. We could also just use traditional email CC if we want to type that in, or use the built-in address book. We could do that. One other thing to note about when we notify staff is we can also subscribe them. So subscriptions let this person stay in the loop on this request. So even though they're not assigned to the request as we are, they would continue to get email updates if they're subscribed. So it can be nice, for example, if you are notifying a manager on an urgent issue, and you can subscribe them so that they continue to get email updates when the customer replies, for example, and they don't have to do anything extra to do that. It'll just happen automatically. Once we have everything set, you can update the request. And we can see down below here our note, who it was sent to, all the other histories right here. We also have this special note menu. This is handy if you want to quote this note. It doesn't have to be a note you wrote. It could be any of the notes. So this is most useful for quoting the customer's initial note, for example. Or you need to forward a note out to another party. You can click this to forward it. It'll make it look like an email forward, basically. We can convert the note to private, make it its own request. And also direct link, which can come in handy. So if you want to send, post a link in an IM app or something like that to another staff person and give them a link to the exact note you're talking about, where maybe somebody sent in some critical information, you can get the direct link to just this note. A couple other things, we could see any staff that are subscribed. So we subscribed Harmony here. The difference between update and update and close. So when you update the request itself remains open. So out in the workspace, we'll still see it, for instance, in my queue here. When the request is either complete or when you know that you don't need to wait for a reply, you can update and close. And HelpSpot's smart about this, so we can say problem solved and update and close here. So now it's gone from my queue. Now, if the customer does write back, HelpSpot will automatically reopen that request and it'll show back up in your my queue. So it can be nice, kind of keep things orderly, to update and close as a general practice and then let HelpSpot reopen if needed. That does vary based on what your administrators want you to do. So that's something to consider there. But a lot of times it does make sense to update and close. Okay, so down here we have a couple other things to cover. The main one being responses. So responses let you have pre-written replies to common requests. And so they're a big time saver, and they can just make you more efficient in a number of different ways beyond just having kind of the pre-written standardized replies. So let's take a look at those. So we'll use a standard option here. So password reset. So people ask us how to reset their password. We can dynamically insert information about the customer. We can fill in the rest of the details for a complete reply. We can even dynamically insert things like our name, so the assigned staff person's name, if you wanted to share this. If you're using signatures, you wouldn't need to do this, but if you're not, this can be handy. So this is an example of a complete reply. Now, you could also do things, let me just cut this out for a second. You could use partial replies. So I often use this for just one paragraph of a larger reply. So maybe there's one paragraph that explains how to get to a certain area within HelpSpot. So I might have a longer custom reply to a series of questions, but I can just insert that one bit of information instantly with a response. So it doesn't have to be a full reply here. It could just be a partial reply. We also use it a lot for things just like a single link. So you could just have, so for us, I have one that's just a link to pricing. So this way, again, in the context of a larger reply, I can just quickly insert this without having to go and open a browser tab and copy it, go navigate there and all that and copy and paste, or typing it all out. I can just use a response to insert it. I'll put this full reply back for now, though. You can use multiple responses every time you do reply to customers. So it's not a template that you're just setting once, but multiple responses can be used together. Okay, so our note, we can organize these into folders. We can have attachments. So this is really handy if you often send out a form to customers or some type of documentation that's, say, a PDF. Rather than having to attach that every time, you can just attach it in a response and then use the response to automatically attach it to your requests. So that's really handy. You can control who can use this response. And then there's request actions, which are really nice. So we can change the status automatically every time we use this response to problem solved. If it was appropriate, like this is an account question, we can set that. We can set reporting tags here. We could set different custom field values. So maybe we always want to set the location New York City. Doesn't make sense with our example here, but just to show that. So any of these can be set, assuming the custom field is valid for the category. Also set a whole bunch of different kind of notification and CC fields and so on. Let's just set a few of those tags. Okay, and then let's do one more. That's a link. And we won't do anything else. It'll just be a link. So we can go into a request. Now to use our responses, we can just search. And so a couple letters and then just hit the return key. It inserted it for us and it changed the status, changed the category, set the reporting tags. So just managed all that. So we can instantly reply without doing anything else. Now we can just update and close here and be done. Just to show in context, if we want to add some more information in, we could navigate to this. Maybe I'm going to navigate to this link I have saved. You can insert that. So you can build up your reply from a series of responses that you either search for or simply navigate to. So really, really handy for quickly being able to reply to customers And then we can update and close that, and we're done. So really quick, really handy, saves a lot of typing, saves a lot of selections in your drop-down lists, and being able to use them together also comes in very, very handy. We're almost to the end here. We're going to open it up for questions. One other little trick here I wanted to show was this little green dot here means that something has changed with this request that's in our My Queue since the last time we looked at it. So it's basically like an unread notification. We can also click it to mark it read, and we can also click it back to mark it unread. So just a handy little thing. So you see a big series of green dots in here. That's what that's for. It's just letting us know something's changed. Just like email, we have read and unread, and we can manually control that by clicking here. And that's it. Let me take a look. I see we have at least one question. Thank you for going through this here. Okay, so the one question we have just on the webinar itself, if there will be a recorded version, and this is being recorded. So we'll be posting that up on YouTube in a bit, usually probably tomorrow. And we'll also be sending an email to you all just for any feedback. So we'll include the link to the recording so you have that and can pass it around to other staff members in your organization, as well as let them know about the training in general. We'll include a link to the training site so they can sign up if you think anybody else would benefit from this agent training. We also have administrator training as well as an advanced topics training session, which is for administrators primarily and goes into more advanced configuration options and things of that nature. Okay, if you have any other questions, you can raise your hand or type in the question box. If not, thank you everybody for taking the time, and I appreciate you taking this 45 minutes and going through agent training. Hopefully it was useful, and talk to you soon. If you have any questions on HelpSpot, you can always reach us at support.helpspot.com and go through there to submit requests for any feedback you have, or of course questions on how to use HelpSpot itself. Oh, one last question. They're typing, so just a minute. So this question is on if you can remote into someone else's computer. HelpSpot itself doesn't provide that kind of remote login capability. So you would have to use an outside tool, like we use GoToMeeting for that, for example. But there are a number of different tools like TeamViewer or things of that nature that let you do that and are really good for that to kind of remote login of other people's systems or servers, as the case may be. So not through HelpSpot directly, but definitely recommend checking out one of those other tools. One other question here, also just on HelpSpot security. So this is more of an administrative question, but HelpSpot itself is secure. Of course, if it's hosted on your own servers, then there's always the underlying server security that needs to be put in place. On HelpSpot Cloud, that's all run off of Amazon's secure cloud, and it's all over SSL. All the data is encrypted at rest. So that is, a very secure system on HelpSpot Cloud. So definitely a lot of banks and financial institutions and healthcare institutions use HelpSpot. So security, definitely something we take very seriously. Okay, great. If you have any other questions, definitely reach out to us at support.helpspot.com. And thanks again for attending. Have a good rest of the day.